we've decided to focus on the representation of women over time within the romantic comedy genre. We consider that rom-coms have very particular ways of portraying women, as the lead characters are predominantly females and serves the target audience. We decided to compare elements from Bridget Jones and His Girl Friday. The two films are from different decades, which will help us get a broader understanding on how women were portrayed back in the 1940s, and if things changed over time. What are the main differences between now and then? Theorist Cherry Potter brings forward the idea that changing stereotypes have altered the representation of women in romantic comedies. She states that there were more defined stereotypes in the 1950s. Females were far more rigid on screen. They were either portrayed as innocent or promiscuous. Nowadays, women are represented as flexible humans, being able to juggle between career or personal life, sensuality and conventionality, confidence or weakness. Perhaps there has been a change in society's attitude, which has led to women being shown as empowered. As film critic David Denby argues, the rom-com genre has seen reverse sexism, in which men are slacker losers and women are put together, directed, smart careerists. Claire Lovey is promoting the idea that women now prefer stronger roles. Anyway, it is questionable as to whether women do actually fancy bold roles, or are they comfortable with this inequality between them and men. His Girl Friday is a romantic comedy that suggests how new possibilities lie in the roles of the sexes. The film offers the alluring mirage of a sexual relationship based on equality rather than exploitation. The female doesn't seem to be depending on a man and doesn't follow to meet any expectations. She is growing and progressing constantly, and the romance narrative is there just to reveal a softer part of her. On the other hand, there is Bridget Jones, who comes across as a sensitive single woman in her 30s, desperately looking for a relationship. Apparently a man could fix all her problems and complete her quest. All the efforts that she does are in order to attract male attention. Her aim is not necessarily reaching her best as a person, but finding the perfect man, settling and having children. His Girl Friday is one of the first films to feature a female journalist who is just as capable as her male counterparts. Then there is Bridget Jones, who works as a publisher. She is clumsy at work and she dresses unprofessionally most of the time, just to draw her boss's attention. She finds the worst time to wear pyjamas, or just underwear, and whenever she tries to be sexy, she makes a fool of herself. Hildy is portrayed as a near equal of the men she works with, by the snappy, striped suits she wears. We think she could be defined as moral in comparison with Bridget. The women portrayed in Bridget Jones's diary has become the norm and the stereotype for women in contemporary romantic comedies. The representation of women can be perceived both positively and negatively, as it now appears that women are more reliant on men romantically, but more liberated and successful in the real world. Laura Mulvey's male gaze theory argues that film is constructed through the eyes of men and women are seen as sex objects. Mulvey's idea that women are not central to the narrative development is not applicable to all romantic comedy films. Hildy is a conservative woman, and she is barely portrayed as a sexual object. There are scenes in Bridget Jones where we can clearly identify the woman as an object of desire or projection of male fantasies. At some point, Hildy breaks down and cries for the first time, as her ex-husband says, because she is manipulated by Walter to stay in the newspaper business and forsake the traditional route represented by Bruce. This suggests women are weak and emotional. Bridget tends to cry a lot when things go wrong, and it is already considered a normal reaction. Also, she finds comfort in alcohol and smoking relaxes her. These vices can suggest how vulnerable she can be and how women nowadays may react in case of a crisis. The fairy tale concept within the genre shows how there has been little changes in representing women's behaviour in rom-coms. Rubenfeld puts forward the idea of the ultimate fairy tale, of men being seen as conquerors or heroes, and women are the victims being rescued. This is similar to Prop's concept of women going from independency towards dependency. However, both films have a happy ending. In His Girl Friday, Hildy ends up in the arms of her ex-husband, who fought to gain her back and isolate the other guy in prison. Bridget ends up curled in Mr. Darcy's arms, and their love is sealed in a sugary kiss under the falling snow. Romantic comedy films have become stereotypical, following the trend of women being reliant on men, even though they are shown as independent. Cherry Potter suggests there's been a shift towards a postmodern representation of women in romantic comedy. The postmodern concept can be summarised as variations upon conventions with the same ending. Hildy was successful, independent, and strived more for professional accomplishments, whereas Bridget yearns for commitment and love, which is now a common element of contemporary romantic comedy. Post-feminism encourages women to define femininity for themselves, escape the male gaze, and break the stereotypes. Bridget Jones is a quite complex character who has proven to be both progressive and independent, yet still in a sense inferior to men. Despite being made at the height of the Second World War, it is ironic how His Girl Friday is a very postmodern film of its time. Overall, the representation of women in romantic comedies has slightly changed over time, but we still have a long way to go in terms of gaining equality for all the sexes. Perhaps the last note could be left to director Joss Whedon, who says, "People feel removed from sexism. I'm not a sexist, but I'm not a feminist. They think there's this fuzzy middle ground. There's no fuzzy middle ground. You either believe that women are people or you don't. It's that simple."